Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freighter. Reggae icon Peter Tosh is one of the most revered sons of Western Jamaica. Today I will be looking back at Peter Tosh through the eyes of his mother, Miss Alvira Coke, from a 2003 interview I did with her for The Gleaner. Peter was indeed a mama's boy.
So wake up your slumbering mentality and come on to this musical reality.
While September 11 is best remembered globally for the 2001 terrorist attack on the United States of America, for 86-year-old Mrs. Alvira Coke, it marks the date 16 years ago when her only child, reggae icon Peter Tosh, was murdered in Kingston. I still remember. How could I forget? I heard the news on the radio and it was so shocking that I almost lost my mind, said a reflective Mrs. Coke as she spoke to the Gleaner at her Belmont home in Westmoreland last week. I still don't know how I lived through that experience. It was the worst experience of my entire life. Mrs. Coke said she had a very special relationship with Peter, who would always visit her within a day or two of coming back to Jamaica after a tour. She said those visits were usually quite special, since when he came to Belmont, he took great delight in preparing meals for the family. Peter was quite good in the kitchen. He was a very good cook, said Mrs. Coke, who added that he was quite good at most domestic chores. You should see Peter wash and iron. When he ironed his pants, the seam usually stand up sharp like a razor blade. Mrs. Coke, a long-standing Christian, did not see eye to eye with Peter on matters such as his Rastafarian belief and his smoking of ganja. She nonetheless had great admiration for his music, his general militancy, and his no-nonsense approach to issues such as racism. I wanted him to go to church and become a good Christian, but he never saw things my way, said Mrs. Coke, who pointed out that Peter was always quite respectful to her and never once spoke ganja in her presence. He never tried to offend me in any way, and that is why we share that special mother and son bond. Because of her age, Mrs. Coke is no longer able to carry out her domestic chores, and as a consequence, she spends most of her time sitting on her veranda, conversing with the numerous visitors to Peter's white mausoleum, which is situated at the entrance of her front yard. I had to make 11 trips back and forth from Kingston to ensure that Peter's body was buried here at Belmont, said Mrs. Coke, sounding every bit as militant as her famous son. Some people wanted to have him buried at Dovecot, but I would not have it. I wanted him right where he is now. Mrs. Coke said that while she knew her son was famous prior to his death, she did not realize to what extent until he was killed.
I'm a mystic man. Such a mystic.
According to her, it is a daily ritual for fans from all over the world to visit her home to get a first-hand look at his mausoleum and pay tribute to him. The only place I cannot recall getting visitors from is possibly Iraq, said Mrs. Coke, who regularly spent several hours per day giving interviews to visitors and having her photograph taken with them. When they are not here praising him, they are here asking me questions about him. While Mrs. Coke misses the fact that Peter is no longer around, she has created quite a relationship with the 10 children he left behind. According to her, whenever her grandchildren make their regular visits to her Belmont home, it is usually a very happy occasion. The children are very special, and I have a special place in my heart for all of them, said Mrs. Coke, as she watched grandson Dave putting the finishing touch to a new sign that was being erected across from the immaculately kept mausoleum. I really do enjoy having them around, because they are what their father has left me. While she did not admit it, Mrs. Coke appears to have a special feel for Andrew, Tosh's singing son, who many people say bears a striking resemblance to his father, sporting shoulder-length dreadlocks like that of the legendary Wheeler.
sitting in the morning sun, watching all them birds passing by.
He is a very nice young man and he seems to love the music as much as his father, said Mrs. Coke with a sweet motherly smile. One thing though, him smoke too much. He was here with me 2 days ago and I had to give him 2 slaps because him walked right into the house with the spliff. While Mrs. Coke has the same reservation about Andrew's Rastafarian belief as she had with his dad, she is nonetheless quite happy that he is making a name for himself in the world of music. According to her, she respects his decision to follow in his father's footsteps. You know I am not into their thing, but would prefer to see him in church beside me. However, I wish him well in what he is doing, said Mrs. Coke. The father was quite good in the music, so he followed in his father's footsteps, and he too should do well. While Mrs. Coke will not be in the United States to watch her grandson perform at the 2003 tribute to Peter Tosh, which is set for Miami, Florida between October 19 to 26, she has given the event her full blessings. I am too old for that. The eyes are not good, and the joints are weak, said Mrs. Coke, who gently stroked her shoulder as she spoke. My time is drawing close. I am ready. I am just waiting on the Lord to call me home. I have done my time and it is time to go home to my Maker. Quiz as to whether or not she hopes to see Peter on the other side. Even a thoughtful Mrs. Coke was quite philosophical in her answer. I really don't know, but with God, all things are possible.
So wake up your slumbering mentality and come on to this musical reality.
In looking back at that fabulous interview with Peter's mother, it was definitely one of those unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica. Unforgettable stories out of Western Jamaica from the scrapbooks of Adrian Freighter. Before you go, please remember to subscribe.